we're going to jump into a segment about some of our online tools. And so the purpose of today's seminar is to focus on environmental planning and environmental monitoring. And so we have several online tools that can help community members learn more about the planning that we do, the planning of how the DEP plans for a successful environment, and how we monitor our state's resources and the pollution that might exist within our environment. And so our first speaker is going to be Brad Bolin. He is from our Air, Energy, and Material Sustainability program. And so he's going to cover our air program's version of what's in my community tool and give you a tutorial, and then we'll pause and have time for a few questions for Brad at the end. So take it away, Brad.
Thank you, everybody. Good morning. Just going to make sure it shows up on Zoom. You can click. Oh.
So share the screen.
Yeah, whatever your screen is. Always technical difficulties to work out. Okay, so it was disabled. Okay. Where are you at? I think that's just going to show me. Thank you. That's all right. All right, we worked out the technical difficulties there. Hello, everybody. My name is Brad Bolin. I work in the Bureau of Evaluation and Planning at the DEP. And I'm here to show you the What's in My Community mapping application. There's a number of ways to find the app. This is an online app. This is not a little app that you download on your phone. You just click on a link. And the Office of Environmental Justice has a link on their resources page. Division of Air Quality and Radiation has it on their homepage. It's on the Bureau of Stationary Sources homepage. It's also on the bottom of the Air Toxics website, which I think is a good place to go to it because the Air Toxics website would give you some context of some of the stuff I'm going to show you about air quality, air toxic emissions, and that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of people that are new and they're learning, so this is a great resource to sort of see, the difference between air toxics and criteria pollutants, the sources of air toxics, and so on. So if you were to go to here, you just click on it and it'll pop right up. So let me go full screen because this is on a laptop and it should look better. Okay, a little scrunch still, but it should look better when you're at home looking at this. So when you first open the app, on your right-hand side, you have the About section. The About section is just explaining that we have every facility with an air permit registered with the Department of Environmental Protection. When you first open it, you see that there's just major sources showing. Minor sources will show up when you zoom in. There's a lot of minor sources, so you can't show it in the beginning. If you scroll down in the About section, we have a user guide. We have the glossary of terms and some data limitations. We also have some air permitting contact information if you ever want to get in contact. We have the minor source contact, which is the PCP helpline, the emission statements, which are through the major sources. And then we have our air enforcement contacts. So you have all our regional field offices that you can get in contact with. And at the bottom, we have the 1877 Warren DEP number. So you could call that if you ever have an odor issue or something like that. It's a 24-hour hotline, and you can report any incidents or abuses that you may see. So let me close out the About section. On your left-hand side, whenever you're looking at a map, one of the first places you want to look at is the legend. The legend is your key code. It'll show you what's on there. You can see we have wind speed and direction, major sources, and our ambient air quality monitors listed. You can close that down just by clicking here on the left side. You can follow my handle. You can zoom in or zoom out just by pushing, positive, plus or minus. And so we'll zoom in. If you have a mouse with a scroll, you can scroll right into a spot, and it scrolls right in. So if we go to we'll go to Newark, and I'll show you when you'll see what's this stuff? Okay. You'll see minor sources will pop up eventually. As you scroll in closer, you can see the major sources now become labeled. And then there they are, they pop up, minor sources. Those are all the little pink dots. So let me put the legend back up. You can see the legend has updated now that you zoomed in. And minor sources include schools, hospitals, and emergency services, which include police and fire. And many people don't think of them as being a source of air pollution, but they do have permits for boilers and emergency generators. And then the rest of the minor sources, like dry cleaners and gas stations, they're in the other category. I distinguish these out on purpose just because it limits the amount of pink dots you would see and sort of can focus in on what you'd be interested in seeing and what's in your community. Over this little home button right here, if you pushed on this, it would bring you right back to the full extent of the map. Below it, there's this thing called My Location. If you were on your phone, you could click on that and it would show up where you're at, and a little dot would show up in your location, and you can match it to whatever sources are around that. So to go, just numerous ways to go places. You can zoom in like that, or you could just simply type in, since we're in Newark, we'll type in Newark, and we'll just click on Newark, New Jersey, and it zooms right to Newark, New Jersey. If you zoom in, you can see the sources. So you have these dots here. We can click on one of them, and we click on Covanta, Essex, and here pops up the name of the facility, the site ID, and the preferred ID, the address, and then we have their permits. So you can just click on the current air permit, and it will give you, after downloading it, it might take a little bit here since we're on the Wi-Fi. Okay, so that pops up, and then you can open the file. Probably have to exit full screen. It's much easier at home. I'm hoping this is what I want. Okay, good. This looks like the permit. All right, so here's the permit. 204 glorious pages of permittees. So you can go in and you can look at anything you want in the permit. If you scroll down, I always think is interesting is the potential to emit. This is the potential to emit. This is as much as this facility can emit. This is what we model when we review the data to make sure that it's protective of public health. And they cannot exceed these amounts that are showing here. I'm going to show you actual emissions, and you'll see that the actual emissions are always lower. They better be always lower than the potential to emit. Otherwise, enforcement will come out, and they'll be fined, and it'll be taken care of. So let me X out of that. X out of that. So we're back on the map. So if we go back, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not on the map. There we go. Sorry, things seem to have moved on me. The legend is now on the right-hand side, but we'll just adapt. Well, so this would be a smaller dialog box again, but let's get back to it. So that was the current air permit I showed you. You can also click on a pending air permit. And so a pending air permit, it will show if this facility has any pending air permits coming up, and you can decide if you want to comment on those pending air permits. I hesitate to click on it because I don't want to go back down that hole, but it'll show the same thing that I showed you before with the current air permits. We have the CO2 emissions, so let's check those out. So we have 4 years of CO2 emissions showing, and these are the actual emissions through our emission statements program. And there's a little graph here showing the distribution over time. We have the criteria pollutants and methane emissions. This will also show you 4 years of data. You click on it. We separated this out because a lot of these are in different units, measurements. Some are in pounds, some in tons. So you have the 4 years of criteria pollutants and methane emissions here listed. The bar graph gets a little clustered, but you can see the distribution over time here. And then we have the air toxics emission statements that you can get access to. So you click on it, it runs a report. This is running a report on Dataminer, which Mike will be showing you Dataminer later on. But we just wanted to make it easier, give you easier access to the data. And so this will show you 4 years again. When 2023 gets finalized, that'll excuse me, pop up automatically. And so you can see all the different air toxics that this facility is emitting. We also have what's called the RPPR, Air Toxics Inventory. I added this later on because not every facility is going to have information from emission statements. It's major sources and a couple of minor. So I wanted to provide you with some facilities will report. This is through our Right to Know program. The RPPR stands for the Release Pollution and Prevention Report. I don't think this facility submits the RPPR, so not a good example. I think I can find one here. Nope. Benjamin Moore, I think they submit to the RPPR. So I wanted to just provide you with another area of air toxics information, so I added this link. So again, this runs a Dataminer report, and then it pops up, and it gives you 4 years of data from the RPPR. We also provide enforcement information, everything from just activities, just to, you know, if you ever drive by a facility and you're wondering, like, if, you know, are they permitted, you know, that you can get that answer here, and you'll see, you know, permit status, yes, you know, we know they exist, we are looking at them. We also put in the enforcement actions, so you can see all the stuff that was ever went against the facility, and we give you information on the fines, why they were non-compliant, and a bunch of other information you can get from there, whether the status is still open. So that was in a minor source, we showed that one. If I can get the legend out of my way. Yeah, it's because of the there it goes. These laptops. Oh, 3 minutes? Oh, God. Okay. So here we on the right-hand side, we have some tools. So this is the layers list. The layers list, this is, you can turn these on and off. Let me get you full extent so you can see a little better. And so the layers list, you can turn off wind speed and direction. You can turn it back on, any stuff that you turn off the monitors off and on. The reason I put the wind speed and direction is important, I think, is because if you're ever faced with an odor issue, you can then, like, if it happens at night and you report it, you can help the enforcement agency by, zooming in, maybe seeing which way the wind direction. If you click on it, it'll give you the time that the wind was blowing in that direction, the direction of the wind. And so you can kind of like build a case against a facility if every night you're smelling this odor and and you can see, well, the winds keep coming out of the west and I keep smelling this odor. And so you can help provide that to enforcement, because enforcement has to come out and there's no equipment or technology that can do an odor. They sniff the air. They're trained sniffers. So they're wandering around your neighborhood just smelling, trying to find it. So anything you can do to sort of help them limit their area of where they know it's coming out of the west, so then they can concentrate, okay, I got these facilities on the west side, which ones potentially have this type of odor, and they can investigate it and get it taken care of, which is the most important thing. Because odors, 9 times out of 10, odors are not really a toxic issue, but it's a quality of life issue. No one wants to live with, stink in the air, just not fun. So another important layer is the overburdened communities layer, this could tell you where the areas are. This is environmental justice layer that they created. And so everywhere you can see in this color palette is where there's overburdened communities. And if you want to know why they're considered overburdened communities, just click anywhere on the map in the census tract, and a little dialog box will pop up, and it'll give you the details, the census details. Another tool that I think is great, let me just remove that out of the way, is the near me. So you can click anywhere, mile radius, anywhere on the map, and it'll create a circle, and it'll list all the facilities that are a mile around this circle. So you can click on them, you have the list of them, how much distance they are from the point that you clicked on. You can click on it again, and you can get that same information you had on the dialog box. If you extend it to 2 miles, it'll extend automatically 2 miles and show you all the facilities that are in that 2-mile radius. You can search by facility name, site ID, PI number. There's another feature here that, and I'll be here later, so if anybody wants to sit down with me, I can show you this. And you can create a report, and you can print out a report. It'll give you a list of facilities and everything else on there. And the last little widget is a municipality search. This is a little more difficult, so I guess I probably don't have the time to get into this one. But again, I can show you later, and it can tell you, every single source in that municipality. It'll list them. It's a great tool. And then you can download the information to a CSV file and throw it into an Excel file and sort it any way you want to sort it. So yeah, I'll wrap up because we're out of time. But I just wanted to say that this application I helped build back in 2017, and this came out of the EJ community. The EJ community wanted data, and they didn't like the way that the interface was that we currently had, which is Dataminer, which is a great tool. It has unbelievable reports in it. So use this in conjunction with Dataminer, because if you need to find a facility, it's much easier to find a facility here. You'll have the site ID, you'll have the program interest number, and you can punch these into Dataminer, as I'll show you later, and run some great reports and get a lot of information from. Same with Joe. Joe will show you a mapping application, and you can use that in conjunction. So thank you, everybody, for coming out. That is my time. I guess I have no time for questions, so I'll be here, so just come up and talk to me. Let me get out of there. show you this in case you forgot everything I said. I created this story map, and this will be linked within our map. We had some technical difficulties. We're going to have it up, and this will tell you all the stuff I said. It's a story map. It lays it all out, and so you don't have to remember everything I just said. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Brad. As you all know, I work for the DEP, but I learned so much. I learned so much just now. So thanks for that. I hope you all found it really helpful as well. So we'll transition to our next speaker in this portion of this little module about what's in my community. I'm going to bring up Joe Stefanoni. He's from our Contaminated Sites Remediation and Redevelopment Program, and so he's going to do the contaminated site version of what's in my community. So take it away, Brad. Or Joe. And I'm going to ask you, Joe, to try to speak as slow as you can for our interpreters online. So thank you.
Okay. Well, as Candace said, I'm Joe Stefanoni, and I'm with the Contaminated Site and Remediation and Redevelopment Program, formerly Site Remediation. I had a long drive this morning, so it was tough on a Saturday to get up. I'm coming from South Jersey, but I'm very happy to be here and be part of this. And when I signed on in September to be part of this, I had no idea that I'd be moving it the same week. So last night I was actually opening boxes to find clothes so I could wear something for today's meeting. The true story. Brad's group was the pioneer. They came up with the first web mapping application to try to get their data out to everyone, the public, to be able to see what goes on in terms of the department and have a better understanding of how it could potentially what's going on in their program impacts people in different neighborhoods. So in the Contaminated Site Remediation and Redevelopment Program, we did something similar. About a year later. So we pulled together a web mapping application similar to what Brad showed you. And we also have this is a site remediation homepage. We also have a community corner which talks about a couple of GIS layers that we put out most recently. I'm not going to open that up, but you can do that. And from here, you can launch Dataminer reports. There's a lot of information that's available through this webpage. And you can also launch our GeoWeb site remediation profile, which is this right here. I've already opened it. So when it opens, this has some information. It's a splash screen. It's more for regulated, the people that are actually doing the cleanups. So then when you actually come into the program, what most people want to know, and Brad went through all this. Thank you, Brad, for going through all the ways to operate within the actual application itself. So I'm going to just jump right in. When you first go in, you'll see the known contaminated site list is on, but it's grayed out. That's the most important layer that we put out there. This is the one that tells people what are active sites within the state that are being worked on in our program and are being cleaned up. And that can be something as small as an underground storage tank cleanup at a homeowner's, to a massive industrial facility that was there 30 years ago and still has contamination that they're dealing with. And so what I'm going to do, there's various ways to go into a particular location. I thought it would hold over, but I'll just zoom in. I can zoom in manually. You can go in and do searches, like what Brad was showing, based on information. But I'm just going to go into the Newark area. And once I zoom in far enough, let me just close this out. You'll start to see the red stars show up that shows contaminated sites. And we have our aerial imagery already on. So let me just. Oops. It's a little difficult to work on this laptop, but we'll get through that. So we come into the area, you could see, and most areas of the state will look like this. And like I said, it's not as scary as it looks. These are contaminated sites that are actively being cleaned up. And like I said, some are minor, some are a little more extensive. But when you start to zoom in, you get into a closer location. So if you want to see something about a particular site, similar to what Brad showed, you would just click on it, and then a pop-up comes up. And once again, you get the site ID and the preferred ID. And these are the key identifiers. If you're calling and want to speak to someone about a site, these are the pieces of information you would need to know. And also to run the Dataminer reports that Mike's going to talk about. So this particular site, you have information about the address. It tells you when it first came online. This was 2013. The program LSRP, we have a licensed site remediation program where environmental consultants are actively cleaning up the site, and they're licensed through the DEP to do these cleanups. And then you'll have like something what we call a remedial level. C1 means that there's a potential for groundwater contamination at the site. And then we'll have a fee category, which is also telling you something. So we call each area at a site that's being cleaned up as an area of concern. And this particular site, they're saying that there's 2 to 10 areas of concern. So it's not a large facility. Some of the facilities greater than 10 areas of concern is going to be a large industrial facility, typically, like something like a homeowner heating oil tank would be one area of concern. And then you have some more information. Is it an unknown source? No. This data load date is just showing that it's current. This layer gets refreshed on a daily basis. So something changes overnight, you're seeing it the following day, or a couple days. We're a couple days behind here, but you can click on this link to view the location in Google Maps. We have some Dataminer reports that are built in specific to our program that'll give you information on this particular site if you were to click on those. And so all this is with a pop-up with the KCSL. And this KCSL is helpful not only, a lot of people look at this in terms of real estate. Okay, I'm looking at purchasing a home, what's nearby in this area, or if you're living in a particular area, what's near my home in terms of contaminated sites. So this is very helpful to provide that type of information. So some of the other layers we have in this particular particular application is this SRP preferred ID. That goes a little beyond what we show in the known contaminated site layer. This has not only just active cases, but it also goes into closed and pending cases. And we give a lot of information about that case. This particular one's not. Actually, I'm going to open it up in the attribute table. That's another way to see data. So if I go here, because there's a lot of data that's not showing up in the pop-up, but it's there. So just having a little problem. This is blocking off where I want to get to. But so I'll just show you. So if you, I don't know, Brad, how you got around this, but can I move this out of the way? Okay. Okay, great. Thanks. So as I go across here, you can see, and some of this is lingo that's within our program, so it may not make sense, but there's a lot of information in here. You can see if there's a classification exception area, which means groundwater contamination associated with the site. Deed notices, which has to do with soil contamination. Engineering controls also has to do with soil contamination, make sure people don't have access or won't be exposed to the soil contamination. Whether or not it's a heating oil case or a regulated underground storage tank case. If it's an NPL site, if it's a brownfield site, there's just a ton of information, a former coal gas site. So this is one of our more powerful layers. We also have, like I said, D-notice areas, which is where they've actually cleaned the site up, but there's contamination they may not have been able to address, so they have to track that contamination. And sometimes it's just what we call historic fill. It just means it's legacy contamination that's, and unfortunately, it's in a lot of urban areas. But they have to make sure there's a cap, that people aren't going to be exposed to the contamination, and it's handled under permit, and they have to monitor on a regular basis to make sure that conditions don't change to allow for people to be exposed to contamination. There definitely is on our site remediation homepage. I'd have to look for it, but there's definitely something there that has acronyms and how to, how to be able to speak the lingo, so to say. Okay. Yeah, so I'm just going to show one more thing, and then we'll go into questions. So if you go to, this is where all the information comes from. So there's a bunch of different groupings here. Like I was looking mainly in sites and facilities. We have receptor information in terms of like schools and childcare centers and things like that, because that's obviously a huge concern for our program to make sure that those types of areas aren't being impacted by contamination. You can look at the geology. We have planning areas where you can look at some brownfields information. Landscape is more the ecological type stuff. And imagery, if you want to see what areas looked like historically. I think this might be. This particular layer doesn't cover the entire state, so I have to. Okay, so here's, and it's kind of neat too, because you can see, like, especially like some of the former industrial facilities, they may be warehouses and parking lots now, but you could go back and see what it looked like, 40 years ago, 30 years ago, in some cases. And I won't go into it, but there's also, Brad went through some tools. Well, actually, I'll just real quickly, and then we'll go into questions. There's this tool that allows you to slide back and forth. Let me just turn on. It's a little difficult to work on a laptop. I'm used to a larger screen, but we're getting by. So the neat thing once you do this is, if I can get to it again. You can kind of slide back and forth. I mean, this area hasn't changed too much, but in some cases it's pretty significant, especially in, some of the suburban areas of New Jersey. So I'll wrap it up with that part of the presentation, but if anyone, in this application, I'll put my contact information, and this is also information for what the link is. Obviously, it's not a simple link for the profile that I just showed you, and then on our web page. But if you were to type in SRPGIS web page, NJDEP SRP, we're still behind as far as getting up to our new CSRR acronym. But you will be able to do a search and not have to type in, a million characters to get to it. So anyway, I'll open up the questions.
Where are we going?
Can someone read that to me?
Hi, good morning. My name is Chris, they, them, with the New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance. I think this is a general question for DEP or just for, and I'm not sure who actually should receive this question, but I'm just opening it to anybody to answer. While I'm seeing this great benefits of having these kind of technologies, what worries me is how are we going about accessibility to these applications and technology. I know that the EJ tool is really easy to use on the computer, but on the phone, it's like a mess. Like it's really hard. And I've tried to like do like workshop with students and like use their phones to get on the app on the application online, and it was not easy. So I think I'm wondering if like, is there any plans to do like an app for these like systems? Because I feel like they will be really useful for us to have those in a way that it's also comprehensive. And then to what Amy pointed out in regards to acronyms and language, I get it that that's already available, but it would be a lot easier if it was like in there while we're going, like a link or something for us to just like click it instead of having to go somewhere else and look at it, especially because like we would have known that we have to go look somewhere else unless you come to this webinar. So like if anybody that's not seeing this, like how are they gonna know? So I think it's just like some details to keep in mind about, and I'm just curious if there's any thoughts about that. And also, how are we working on making it accessible in different languages? Because like we are a very multifaceted and multilingual state, so I think it's important to keep that in mind.
Okay. Well, I can't address the first part of your question about applications being developed specifically for the phone. I mean, there are ways to make it more phone friendly, but that's not something where our group had been thinking about doing, but that's a good point. As far as the acronyms, you're absolutely correct. I'm glad that came up today. That's something we will put into the application itself to give people access to that. We're so used to speaking the lingo, sometimes we forget. I know when I first started, it was like everyone was speaking another language when I first started with DEP. It took me a couple of years just to be able to like understand where people, when they would start to use CEA and NFA and AOC, and I was like, what are people talking about? And then your third part of your question was languages. I haven't explored that. Maybe Brad has something he can add about that, but that's definitely a good point too. And if there's something that we can do with that, we'll look into it and see if we can develop something. Brad, did you want to?
I'll just chime in because I agree 100%. On the phone, it's awful. But this is a third-party app, so we have to build it off of theirs. But 2026, leading up to that, before then, they're not supporting this app anymore, so we're rebuilding this stuff. So we're definitely, the phone is in mind. We're gonna make it usable because it's a mess on the phone. But that's a great point for bilingual. Honestly didn't think of it, so it's something we're gonna keep in mind then when we rebuild these things. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Christine Gell. For EJ Map, we did explore languages. A lot of the materials around it are at least in Spanish and English, but there's no real way to interpret the tool itself because of the way it's built and how many layers there are to it. There's no simple way to do that. So the explanation would be we would have to have somebody who actually speaks the language go through the entire tool to help us and then create a separate tool in a different language. So I don't know if that's the same for these guys, but the tool itself becomes really hard.
Yeah, you can go.
Hi, I'm Patricia from South Orange. And I love this tool. It's a lot of great information and it's some kinks, but it's offered really well. I appreciate it. My question is about how does a site get on this list? Is it triggered by development? Is it self-reported? And I guess I'm just worried about what we don't know, the sites that are not on there
Well,
that might exist.
there's a lot of different ways that sites can come into our program. One of the main ways for the larger industrial facilities is every time there's a transaction that involves a change in ownership or cessation of operations, that automatically triggers an environmental investigation that has to, provided they're under specific, what we call SIC codes, standard industrial classification, has to do with what type of operations they had at that facility. So we pick up a lot of these legacy sites through this, we call it our ISRA program, Industrial Site Remediation, I'm sorry, Act, yeah, Industrial Site Remediation Act. And if someone does have a spill at their site, they are required to call our hotline. If it's a heating oil tank is being taken out and there's contamination associated with the person that's taking the heating oil tank has to call the hotline. If someone sees contamination, they would call our DEP hotline. So a lot of property transactions, even if they're not handled under our ISRA, someone buying a property, what they call due diligence, they want to make sure they're not buying contamination and all the headaches that potentially come with that. So they'll do an investigation. If contamination is found, that would, could make its way to us. And then once they're in the program, then they have to follow certain procedures to clean the site up and eventually close it out. There are requirements to report, yes. If you have a spill, you are required to report that to, yes. Okay, I just want to address an online question. Someone asked, where you see a dot on a star on a property for known contaminated site, does that mean the whole property is contaminated? It does not mean that. It could mean that there was an underground storage tank that leaked and only a small section of the property. It could mean the majority of the property is contaminated with some of your larger industrial facilities where, back in the 50s where they had no environmental regulation per se. It could mean that most of the property is contaminated. So it's specific to the actual site itself, and that's where these Dataminer reports are so critical, that you can actually look up and see what's going on at a site. And a lot of times we have reports in electronically, or you could always do a paper file review for some of the older cases that don't have electronic documents. So, do I need to wrap up? All right, thank you, and I'll pass it over to Mike Gage, and he'll tell you a lot about Dataminer. Oh, take a break first.
Yeah, thanks,
Okay.
Joe. Thanks, Joe. So we're actually going to take a break. We're going to take about a 6-minute break and return at 11:40. So thank you so much for bearing with us. We're a bit behind schedule, but we'll make up the time. So we'll resume at 11:40, and we'll go to Mike after that. All right, so we're back. So I want to introduce our next speaker. We have Michael Gage, who's from our Office of Enforcement Policy, who's going to take us through our Dataminer platform. You've heard it come up throughout the day so far, and so we'll get a deeper dive into Dataminer. So take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Candace. My name is Mike Gage. I've been with the department since 1987. So I've been there 37 years. It's been a very gratifying experience to see how things have evolved in those years. Way back when I was an inspector, I think we had handwritten checklists, paper files. If you from the public wanted to know something about a facility, you'd have to schedule an appointment, come to our office, and look at that paper file and try and make sense of it. In my time that I've been here, things have changed quite a bit. We now have database systems, we have online access. Life has become so much easier for you and for us in terms of understanding what's happening at a facility. And so what I want to talk about today is Dataminer. As other speakers have already mentioned, it is a system that lets you get data out of our system. And so let me just kind of jump right into it. This PowerPoint will be made available after today, so you can look at these slides at your leisure. All right. So as I mentioned, my name is Mike Gage. I work in the Office of Enforcement Policy. All right. So as I said, I'm with the Office of Enforcement Policy. My group gets involved with various aspects related to the enforcement programs and just trying to make sure we are consistent and also establish policies for various things, whether it be open space access, or supplemental environmental projects or drones or whatever it may be. But my role in that office is more related to technology. And my whole goal is really to make information easier to access for our staff, for the public, and to simplify processes. So let's talk about Dataminer. So Dataminer is a tool that lets you get data out of our system. As you've already heard from the various speakers, we've got a ton of data in our systems. We've got data on contaminated sites, we've got air permits, we've got enforcement actions, we have inspections, we have properties that we own. There's all this data. But in terms of getting information about that data, that's where you use Dataminer. And so in Dataminer, you'll be able to see inspections, investigations, enforcement actions, permits, approvals, licenses, registrations, contamination information, emissions, discharges, releases, pretty much everything the department does. In one way or another, you can be able to access that information through Dataminer. How you get to Dataminer, the first thing you need to understand is how our data is arranged. And that our data is arranged in two basic ways. We have data by sites, which is mostly what you'll be dealing with, where we have a piece of property that the department has some involvement with.
Hey, Mike, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I don't think your slides are advancing. Just one second, folks. I don't think the slides are advancing for the people on Zoom. Okay.
So most of our data is arranged based upon sites, pieces of property that we're involved with. And that's mostly what I think you're going to want to see. There is another set of data that we have related to individual people, people that have a license, where they deal with operating a wastewater treatment facility or they apply pesticides. That there's another version of our data that's based upon a person. But we're not going to really focus on that here. I just want you to be aware of that there is something called People Master File, which you'll see in some of the different Dataminer reports. But what I want to focus on is data related to sites. And so in terms of a site, the site is the property that we're involved with. And then each of our programs that are involved with that site is called a program interest. So air, water, hazardous waste, solid waste, pesticides, each of those programs has a program interest. And with that program interest, they also have a number. And you need to know those numbers and program names to be able to find data in Dataminer. And I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways that you can find that easily. So this just kind of gives you an overview of what a site looks like. So this happens to be the Covanta incinerator facility. And so that is a site. And that site has a name. We gave it this name of Essex County Resource Recovery Facility, and it has an address. And so that's a site. And then every program that's involved shares that same address. They all are tied to that same address, but their program interest name and the numbers that they use could be slightly different. And so for some facilities, you might even have like two different facilities involved with the same site. So you might have a strip mall where the site is the Eagle Shopping Plaza, and the program interests are the nail salon, the dry cleaner, the photo shop. You could have situations like that. You could also have situations where within a site there might be sub parts of that site that are operated by somebody else. But in Dataminer, you're going to see the site, and you'll see the program interest. And so in this example, you'll see it identifies all the program interests, what name they're using, what number they're using, and what program they call themselves. And that's going to be really important information as we go forward. So in terms of how you get to Dataminer, there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. If you were just to go to our main DEP webpage, you'll see Dataminer listed right on the edge, right here. So I can click on that, and that'll bring me into Dataminer. I could also just type in NJDEP Dataminer, and that would bring me into it. And then the easiest way for me is, the thing that can be overwhelming about Dataminer is that there's all these reports, and you need to know so much to be able to find the report that you want. And so what I find is easier is the reports I think people need the most, we'll just give you a direct link to that report off a web page. And so that's what I've been trying to do. And so just to show you the web page for my office, which is enforcement policy, click on this link. it's not working. As everyone else has said, it is a pain working off a laptop. Slideshow. All right, so this is the Office of Enforcement Policy. That's the group that I work with. This page is very helpful in that it gives you direct links to the enforcement components of each of the media. So air, water, hazardous waste, land use, et cetera. So you have links that get you into each of those programs.
Sorry, we're not sharing. Zoom was focused on the so share screen. Okay, cool.
All right. So like I said, this gives you all the different programs that we deal with. There are enforcement pages, but what I want you to focus on is these three things in the top left. This first tool is a Dataminer tool that lets you look up the information for a facility to get the identifying numbers that you need. And so it's going to let you look it up by name, by address, by program, what have you. And so this is a direct link to that Dataminer report. This is a report I'm particularly proud of. This report is really going to tell you everything you want to know from an enforcement perspective. This will tell you the name of the site, all the programs that are involved with that site, who's been out to that facility, whether they found violations. You can actually see the inspection report. You can see what enforcement actions have happened, what the outcome of those enforcement actions, whether a fine has been paid. You can see what incidents have been reported for that site. In one place, you get all that information. And this is a direct link into that Dataminer report. And then this other report is more for the benefit of a facility where it can show them whatever outstanding bills they have. And so it's helpful for them to see if there's any outstanding bills they need to pay, but it also gives you some sense of, you can look up outstanding bills and you would think if a facility isn't paying their bills, they're probably ignoring other environmental obligations as well. And so these are very powerful reports for getting a better understanding of a facility. And so I would just want to show you that if I were to click on this link, and is this sharing? Okay. You'll see it's going to ask for a program interest ID number and the name of the program. Well, how do you get that? Well, there again, we've tried to make that easier for you. So if we go back to the PowerPoint, I'll just show you a few different ways you can do that. So you could have clicked that link for this link right here. I could have clicked that link for finding the ID number for that facility, and it would have brought me to this report. And so let's go ahead and do that now, just so you can see it firsthand. And so you can see it gives me choices of finding it by the ID number, finding it by the location, by name. There's a bunch of different choices. So here, if I wanted to pick up by name. And this is where it kind of gets back into when I showed you the site has a name and each program interest has a name. This is that name it's looking for. So it's very helpful for you to know if there's certain facilities you have an interest in, to know what name we've given it. So let's just use the example of Covanta. And it'll show me the various Covanta facilities and where they're located. And you'll see within this, it tells me their program interest number, and it also tells me what program is involved. And here again, there's a lot of acronyms we have, so you'd have to know that this is a site mediation program versus air versus water. But this is one way you can do it. But the great thing is we now have all these maps, and you've already seen examples of this already, where on the map itself, you can find out the number that you need. And so let me just show you a different way to see this. So this was the first example I showed you where you find the number using Dataminer. But another way you can do it is with one of our maps. And so you saw the map related to the site mediation program. You saw the map related to air. Well, there's also EJ map, which I know will be a whole nother topic for another seminar. But I just want you to make aware that on EJ map, it makes it very easy to be able to identify the program interest number that you're going to need. And so this is a a screenshot of EJ map, but let's go into the real thing. So I want to get to environmental justice, so here I am on the main DEP page, and I'm going to go to topic, and I'll scroll down to environmental justice. And I could, where, Christine? Okay. Oh. To the right, here we are. So EJ map, I'll click on that link. I have to read this stuff and then hit OK, which is hidden. I know, but it's hidden behind this thing. There we go. And I can move this back again. So this should look familiar to you. You may not have noticed it, but all these maps are part of ArcGIS. That's a software platform that we're using. And so it's gonna be a whole nother topic for a different presentation about how to use EJ map. All I want you to see right now is the idea that I can scroll into a certain area. I'll get rid of this. All right, let's just search here and see what we can find. I guess we need to focus on Newark first. It would help if I spelled. There we go. All right, so you've seen this kind of already where you have a map, and as you scroll through, you start to see various shapes, whether they be contaminated sites or air sources or what have you. In this case, in terms of EJ map, it's going to show you where the environmental justice community areas are and what facilities that are subject to EJ are within that area. And there'll be different shapes for the different types of facilities, whether it be a major air pollution source or a solid waste facility or what have you. And why am I not seeing? So if we click on the facilities tab, so these are what the different shapes are. So you have a blue circle for an air facility, a pentagon for a resource recovery facility, what we would call an incinerator. So you can see there's all these different shapes. And just like we saw in the other demonstrations, you can just zoom right in and then find the facility that you want. And ultimately, if I were to click on one of these little dots, it'll tell me the information about that facility. And one of the pieces of information it could tell me is the name of the facility and the program interest number. And so let's try and get back to Newark. So here we are in Newark, and I can start zooming in, and you'll see all these different shapes show up. If I had the legend open, it would have told me what type of facilities they are. But somewhere in here, I'm going to be able to find the Covanta facility, and it would tell me what their numbers are. I'm just going to go to my screenshot just because it's quicker for the purpose of this presentation. So let me just bring that back up. So in EJ Map, had I zoomed into the Covanta facility, it would have given me this information that you saw on the right here. And if I then looked at that more closely, you'll see, if you'll notice, there's actually two dots here. One is for the solid waste being an incinerator, and the other one is because they're also an air source. And for each of these little pop-ups, it gives you what they call the preferred ID number, what we also call a program interest number, and that's the number that you really need to use for Dataminer. And so as I mentioned, you could have used that, found that number through searches within Dataminer, but the easy way to find it is just from EJ Map or the other maps that you saw. Because you'll see right on here, it tells you, here's the air involvement and what number they're using. Here is the solid waste involvement and what number they're using. And once you have those numbers is where you could then use that report that I showed you on the Office of Enforcement Policy webpage. And so if I were to now go back to that page and click on that link, which we will do. I just want to know that number first. 133546. So somebody's got to remember that number. All right. Programs and units, enforcement policy, inspections, violations, and inspections by site. So that is our program interest number. They also call it a preferred ID number. So I need to put that number in and know what program it was for, which in this case it was for air. And then I'm just gonna hit this little search button. And what this is gonna bring up is a report that's got 4 tabs of data. The one tab will just tell me this is the name of the site and here's all the programs that are involved, how they're involved, and what their identifying number is. And then it will give me the inspections, but it will give me not just the air inspections, it'll give me all the media that have been out there for the last 5 years, with most recent inspection up top. So here's the first tab that we have. This is the site information. This is where it tells me that this did not work. Let's try that again. And make sure we actually had the right program. So the air was actually a different number, 07, I'm sorry, where is it? Yeah, 07108, 07736. So these program interest numbers are actually going to be listed on the permits the facility has, on bills that they receive, in various places. And then obviously you can find it through these other tools I just showed you. And the one little trick is to uncheck this view report by pages. Since this is a web-based thing, I can now just scroll through everything rather than having to go to page 1, page 2, et cetera. So I want to uncheck that. And now I'll hit search. And the beauty of this report is that although I gave it just one particular program interest, it's going to retrieve everything for the whole site. And so it'll tell me all the programs that are involved, all the inspections that have occurred, all the enforcement actions for all the media. But just realize it's only showing you enforcement stuff. It is not showing you site remediation. It is not showing you air permits or any of the other permits that would be out there. My long-term goal is to have this one report be comprehensive, that in one place you see everything. You see all the enforcement stuff, you see the permitting stuff, you see the site remediation stuff, but that's going to take some effort to build that tool to be able to do all that. And how long this report takes to run is dependent on how much is involved with that facility. You can imagine a small dry cleaner that we've only been to a few times, that report's going to run much quicker because there's a lot less data to be retrieved. A place like this that we go to monthly or more often, it has a lot more data to bring back, because remember, it's bringing back 5 years' worth of data. So you just need to be patient and just realize that the reason it's taking so long is because there's so much information it's going to give you. So here is our site. So here again, we talked about the idea that there's a site and then a program interest. So here is a site, the Essex County Resource Recovery Facility. It has this particular address, and every program that's involved shares that address because that's why they're tied to that site. And they each have their own ID numbers. And so in here, it identifies what their ID number is and what program they are, and those were the things that you needed to run this report. And so this just tells us the name, the information on the site. You'll see there's other tabs. So if we click on the tab for inspections, it's going to show me the most recent inspection that occurred, who did it, whether they were in compliance or not. If they were out of compliance and we actually issued a violation, there'll be red text saying out of compliance. But not only does it tell you whether they were in compliance or not, it tells you like when that inspection occurred, who did the inspection, whether it was us or a County Environmental Health Act agency, what the identifiers are to find that report in our system. And so this is the inspections, and what's great about this is that not only does it show you all the inspections that have occurred and whether they were in compliance or not, but if you want to actually see the particulars of an inspection, so I want to look at that one where there was a violation, I want to know what exactly they were in violation of, I can just click on this link right here, and it'll actually bring up the inspection report. And so I can actually see who it was that did the inspection, who they met with, what they found, what was cited, what was in compliance, what was a warning. I'll see the whole report and know all the details of whether this was a small paperwork violation or something more major. And I don't know why this didn't work, but normally it would work and you'd be able to see all those details. And in the PowerPoint, I gave you a screenshot just showing you one of those examples. Let's try a different example just to see what happens. So you can see it tells you the activity number that we have in our system, what type of inspection it was, who did the inspection, the name and address of the facility, whatever description they wrote up about their inspection, the actual checklist that they used, so you'll know exactly all the things that we checked on and whether they were in compliance with those things, or if they were out of compliance, what exactly they did that was wrong. And so you have all the information right at your fingertips. And so that's for inspections. And so let's go back and look at that report again. So here were all the inspections. Like I said, the most recent ones could be at the top. We have another tab for enforcement actions. And so here again, you can see the most recent one will be at the top, and you'll see all the different programs that have been involved, what type of enforcement action they issued, and what, if there was a fine, and if that fine's been paid. And I am looking to further refine this report to have, to make it more user-friendly. Like everybody in our agency knows what an NOV is, but the average person on the outside world doesn't know that means notice of violation. So I'm looking to revise this report further so it would actually have those words in here to know it's an administrative consent order, or a notice of violation, or whatever it might be. But this is the enforcement actions. And then the last tab you have here is incidents. The one thing you know about incidents is, going back to the story you were given this morning, where you notice an odor in an area, you know which way the winds are blowing, you know what facilities are near there, you report it, we go out there. If we can actually trace down where that odor is coming from, and we actually confirm the source, then that incident will show up here being associated with that facility. If we can't actually figure out where it's coming from, then it wouldn't show up in here. That's the thing you need to know about this. This only shows incidents that we've tied to this facility, either because we confirmed it was really coming from them, or they actually reported it themselves. But here again, it's a very useful tool to understand whatever environmental incidents have been associated with this facility and what came of it. So that was the crash course on Dataminer. So these reports, I mentioned that they're all available off that link, off the Office of Enforcement Policy page. You can also get them through Dataminer itself. Just to give you a sense of how confusing Dataminer can be, let's just get to that. So if you actually go to Dataminer, you're presented with these three different choices. And for what I just showed you, it would be considered a category. So I can go to the category, and that gives me all these choices of categories. And in this case, I was looking at things related to compliance and enforcement. So I choose that and hit submit. And then it's going to present me with this overwhelming grouping of reports. So I can see enforcement actions have been issued. I can see enforcement initiatives. I can see inspections. I can see violations. And there's all this stuff here, and it could take you a significant amount of time to actually read through all these different descriptions to figure out which report you want. And so ultimately, that report that I just ran is under here where it says, it's right here, this report. Inspections, violations, and incidents by site. So you could come into Dataminer, you could choose, you want to look by category, you want to look at compliance enforcement, you then know you want to look at inspection activities, and you could then find this report. And so you could do it that way, or you could just go to the link that's right off our page, our web page, and it just makes it simpler for you. Like likewise, if I wanted to look at that report of bills, there is a category for billing information, you can find the report there, but to me, why not make it easier to just give you the link right to that report off a web page? One other little trick to know about Dataminer, it's going to be a throwback to your story, to fairy tales, in that one of the frustrating things about Dataminer is you have to follow the breadcrumbs. And what I mean by that is, like here I went through and I got to this particular grouping of reports, and I realized I actually don't want to look at compliance enforcement, I want to look at whatever, site remediation or something. If I hit the back button, it'll take me out of Dataminer altogether and bring me back to the main DEP page. That instead, if I want to go back to an earlier choice, I have to follow the breadcrumbs back. And this right here are the breadcrumbs. So right now I'm on the compliance and enforcement page. If I want to get back to the earlier page where I looked at the categories, I would follow the breadcrumb back to there. And then if I want to go further back, I would follow the breadcrumb further back. That with Dataminer, never hit the back button, because all it does, it just takes you out of it altogether. And it's just very frustrating. So that's Dataminer. There's a ton of things in Dataminer. I just really wanted to show you how you can see a facility. I also want to share with you a totally different product that isn't ours, but it's important for you to be aware of. And it's called Echo. And so the thing you have to know about the department, and Sean kind of mentioned this morning, is that ultimately EPA is the one in charge. They're the ones that passed all these rules. They let each state enforce those rules. And we can come up with additional standards beyond what they have. And so they empower us to do work on their behalf. We in turn work with the county health departments to do work on our behalf, and we give them money and they tell us what they did, and we do oversight of them as well. All of our data, since EPA is ultimately authorizing us to do this, all of our data goes into EPA's database. And they have several different databases. And so there's one for our air data, there's one for water data, there's one for hazardous waste data, and there's one for pesticides data. And so the great thing about Echo is you not only see the inspections that we did and the enforcement actions that we issued, but you can also see what EPA may have done. And so that's something that you don't get when you're just looking in our system. And so let me just show you Echo. So if I just click on this link for Echo, slideshow from current. So here's Echo, and it's similar to what you saw with Dataminer, that you can look it up by name or by ID number or by location. I'm going to do it by name. I'm just going to type in Covanta, Essex, and see what shows up. And you can see there it is. And if I actually click on that link, it's going to provide a bunch of things. I think it will actually show me a map of where this facility is, which is what you see right here. You can see it gives you a whole lot of details in terms of like the latitude and longitude and what region it's in and all this kind of stuff. And the thing you know about Echo also is it's not just New Jersey data, it's nationwide data. So if you're involved with other states, this is a great tool for you to have available to you. But you can see for a given facility, it tells you what enforcement actions have been issued, whether they were in compliance or not. It shows you a lot of details about the facility, how they're regulated. It's just a wealth of information, and it does allow you to go even further into this, that you could actually just show certain media that you're interested in, certain statuses that you want. But it's one you be aware of that. And in terms of how Echo is different from Dataminer, so Dataminer, that's our data. And so our data is more comprehensive than what Echo provides, and that our data is going to be air, water, hazardous waste, solid waste, pesticides, dam safety, radiation, et cetera. All of our programs, you can see the data through Dataminer. Whereas Echo only has air, water, hazardous waste, and pesticides. I mean, those are the biggest programs, but just know that it is limited to just those data sources. Dataminer only has DEP activities, whereas Echo gives you all of our stuff plus EPA stuff. And so EPA does periodically come into New Jersey for various purposes, and it's nice that you can actually see what EPA found as well as what we found. With Dataminer, you saw that for the most part, you've got Dataminer, which gives you data like in tables, where you can see a bunch of data in a table form, and then elsewhere you have maps that kind of show you what places we have, and there's links to data, but it's not necessarily integrated as much together, whereas in Echo, it does a better job, I think, of showing those two together. And we're trying to get to that ourselves, but just know that that is one of the advantages of Echo. And then getting back to Dataminer, as you saw with the activities I looked at, we could actually see the inspection report, the enforcement action, what have you, whereas in Echo, you really just could see basic information. There was an inspection and they found violations. But to actually know what the specific violation is, you're not going to see that in Echo, whereas you would see it in ours. And in Echo, it is going to identify our ID numbers. So if you're looking at a New Jersey facility, it will identify our program interest numbers. Those same numbers that you used in every other Dataminer report, they're there. So that's kind of what I want to go over. This is just touching on the briefest part of what Dataminer has, because I just focused on Dataminer as it relates to inspection information. You've had other speakers touch on Dataminer as it relates to site remediation information and error information. I think we have speakers later on today that'll talk about Dataminer as it relates to air permit data. There's just a wealth of stuff in there, and so I would definitely encourage you to look through Dataminer and just see what's available to you. But at least this gives you a starting point to know if you want to see what's going on with a specific facility, you have that tool to easily see that information. So with that being said, I'll open up to questions.
Thank you. Patricia again from South Orange. Again, lots of great information, great tool. And I'm wondering, as I'm looking through, as you presented, especially that last piece, is there, do you at all sort of, what's the word? Bring all the data together. There's a better word. I can't think of it right now. But get all the data together to really look at a profile of some of the actors in our state and start to develop sort of, you know, a list of, I don't want to say, of problematic actors in our state that sort of looks at the fines, how responsive they are to some of the issues they may be facing, the number of issues they may be facing, things like that. Do you ever do anything like that?
We do internally, like in preparation for these various engagement sessions, one of the things I'll be asked to do is identify what facilities we've had in those towns nearby and what violations, who's had the biggest fines. And so
Yeah.
that helps us be better prepared that if you want to bring up, hey, what's happening with such and such facility, we're not caught off guard, that we know, yes, we know we've had some big violations with that facility. That's always something we can look to publish that type of information publicly. That one of the advantages I see by making this data so easily available, it's great for you from the public, but there's also a hidden agenda that can also be a public shaming tool in the sense that
Right.
if everybody knows that you can easily see how good or bad that facility is, and the facility itself knows it themselves, well, there's an incentive for them to do better because if they're doing badly, everyone will know about it. And
Right.
so there is also that aspect.
So you say you do it internally, but do you share it with environmental justice organizations?
With our environmental justice program as part of preparing for an engagement session. But
Okay.
those are reports we could also look to publish so that they're available to you as well.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so right now I'll run a report where if they tell me they're doing an engagement session in Newark, and they want to know, tell me what's happening in Newark and North Bergen, Bayonne, what have you, I'll run a report that'll identify for those towns what violations we found and what the outcome is. That's the report I also want to make publicly available and give you the ability where you can choose a given county, a given town, and see that data. So that is something I'd like to do. And you all have my contact information as part of the PowerPoint. If there's things that you want and you're not seeing it available or not easily available, let me know, and then that's the way I know that it's something that you guys want, and then I can build that. Because as it is, I mean, I think this report you just saw, to be able to just go to a web page and click a link, you know, that's so much easier than what you would have had to do in the past. We have to go through the whole Dataminer category, subcategory approach. And similar to that for EJ Map, there is this idea that on EJ Map, we could have the link right off of the EJ Map icon give you this report. And maybe we could even have it give you this report, give you the air report, give you the site remediation report. That in one place you get everything handed to you from a map perspective rather than a table perspective. But I definitely, we all want to hear from you, like what is it you want to see so we can do that.
I have a question from online from Nicole Miller. She's asking, in addition to having the terms in the report, can there be a link or addition of a glossary to help those outside of DEP distinguish what the various terms mean? For example, the difference between notice of action and consent decree, et cetera.
Yes, so the report that I currently have available, I'm looking at reworking that that report further. For example, like to have more plain language, such as notice of violation versus NOV. I'm also looking to have at the very beginning of the report a summary of what all the lingo means. What is a notice of violation? What is an administrative order? A notice of civil administrative penalty assessment? All these different acronyms that we use to give you an index that basically explains what those things mean. And to do it in one place, so you don't have to go searching across a bunch of different platforms to see that.
Would you be able to either show how to download or print out a report for one of these sites out of Dataminer?
Sure. So let's just go through one of these. So let's just start by, we would have written all this stuff down. So let's just remember for the Covanta, we're just going to use that example just because it's handy. So if somebody can write this number down for me. So air, and the number was 071. No, for air it's 07105. Oh, I'm sorry, wait. 07736, yes. All right, so let's just start from the very beginning. I'm going to jump right into so I'm on the DEP webpage, programs and units, enforcement policy. And ultimately, these links, I want to have them be on every one of our enforcement pages, that this margin that you see here, that'll be on all the enforcement pages. Right now, it's on this Office of Enforcement Policy, and it's also on our hazardous waste webpage, but not a lot of others yet, but it will be. So I want to click on that report, and you'll see it's actually bringing me right into Dataminer. It's just saving me the effort of going to Dataminer, category compliance enforcement, and then the category of inspections. It's just bringing me right into that report. And now I need to know that number. Is that it? So that's the number, and we have to know that it's for air. And you want to remember to uncheck this view report by pages. I feel like there should be music while this is searching. Yes. So I'm old enough to remember when it used to be spinning hourglass is what you would see.
Maybe I can ask a question while it's loading.
Sure.
My name is Michel Boufadel at NJIT. I mean, you're reporting the violation and stuff, and also for the site remediation. Do you report actual like contamination level anywhere? Like, you know, the concentration is 5,000 milligram per kilogram. Is there anywhere that we can find it?
Probably. I don't deal with the site mediation aspect, so I would have to defer to that program to answer that question. My background is enforcement, so I can just show you, yeah, we can show you what enforcement actions have been issued, and you can even see what the actual violation was for and what the fine was. I imagine there's similar levels of data to know what contaminants there are and what levels they are. I'm just not the person who can answer that question, so I will yield that question to somebody else. So here's this report. So it's run. If I want to now save this, I get the choice of doing it as a PDF or an Excel. I always find Excel easier. So I just simply hit that button for Excel. It says you've selected a file to be downloaded. And eventually it's going to actually bring up this file, which we'll see in a minute. And there it is. So I click on that link. So the beginning of this just kind of gives you some background information that, you know, various programs started using this database system in different years. So just kind of giving you some background on, you may not see data be up before a certain year, and here's why. In some ways, it's kind of moot because all the data you can see is just for 5 years anyway, because I can't go back to, it would take the report too long to run back 20 years worth of data. So it does run 5 years. So this tab is just the one that gave you the site information. So the name of the site, all the program interests that are involved, their numbers, what media they are. Here are the inspections. And you'll see it's identifying all the different inspections that occurred, whether they were in compliance or not. These links may not work when it's an Excel file. They did work when you actually had the report live in Dataminer, but as an Excel file, they may or may not work. But here you do have all the inspections. You can imagine as being in Excel, if I wanted to sort on a column and just sort this for those that are out of compliance, I could do that. Here are the enforcement actions, and here are the incidents. So you can download this data whenever you want, and it's just very easy to work your way through it. So in terms of limitations of data, know that it's showing you the past 5 years. If you want to go back further than that, there's other reports where you look for that, but my thought was 5 years is probably what most people want to know about. And know that it's only showing you public data. So if we just went and did an inspection yesterday and the report is still in draft, waiting a review by a supervisor, you're not going to see that report in this field. You will in a couple weeks, but you won't see it today. So it only shows inspections where the report's been finalized, and it only shows you enforcement actions that the facility's actually received. So ones that we're still working on, or ones that we've mailed to the facility but they haven't gotten it yet. The thought is we don't want to have you in your pajamas knowing that that facility down the street is getting some $50,000 fine before they know about it themselves. So just know that that is the one limitation of the data. It's only public data. It's only enforcement actions that the facility has received. It's only inspection reports that have been finalized. And I mentioned with the incidents, it's only incidents that we've actually confirmed were tied to this facility. Other questions? Yes.
Sorry. I actually have a question. Hi, my name is X, and I'm the Environmental Justice Organizer for Clean Water Action. And I work primarily with the environmental justice law, and specifically the Dataminer. So some of the rhetoric you use is like following the breadcrumbs or may or may not work. I'm trying to figure out who this tool is accessible for, if even the people you're describing it to use to give to the community, you're saying it's like wishy-washy. And secondly, I have an example of this. I have a facility I'm looking into, and I tried to use the EJ map to find their enforcement violations. I couldn't do it, but on the What's in My Community map, I found it, and it's almost the exact same tool.
Okay. Well, in terms of wishy-washy, so what I was trying to explain to you is simply that there are some nuances to how you use Dataminer, that you don't want to use the back button because it just takes you out of Dataminer altogether. That if you realize you chose the wrong type of report, You just need to follow, like I said, they call them breadcrumbs. It's not something I came up with, but that's just what they call it, that you need to follow the breadcrumb back to get back to the earlier step you were on. Or you can simply just click on Dataminer altogether and then work your way through again. That's just a function of the way the software is arranged. In terms of finding that particular facility, so EJ Map is showing you facilities that are subject to the EJ law. So it's not necessarily all facilities.
Show me the enforcement actions. I can show you the exact facility. I searched for the Diversified Global Graphics Group, and in the EJ map, their enforcement actions didn't come up. But in the What's in My Community app, the enforcement actions came up, and there were over 20.
All right, so why don't we just,
What- Yeah, I understand, but it has the exact same information as the other app, except that one tab isn't there. So why is it so much different? Okay, I'm just trying to figure out why violations aren't like relevant to permits, but I understand. Thank you. That's all.
which facility is it? Diversified what? Which one? Well, I just searched for diversified. All right. So through this, we know. So our program interest number is the first column. So let's just find that number. Brent Mill Road. I know, I'm sorry. I'm old. Where was it? Tell me when to stop. Did you already know the number offhand?
I'm just going to interrupt if you.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so I'm just going to interrupt. We're putting Mike on the spot a bit here. So what I'll ask X if you might want to connect with Mike offline and just kind of sit next to him and we can go through this example on his laptop, just because I don't want to stand in the way of lunch. So this conversation about how you specifically find facilities, we welcome your the exercises and the research questions that you're exploring in your own time, because knowing how you go through and use tools helps us to understand how we can build and better make our tools usable for the public. So this exercise that you're exploring, X, I think it will be really helpful. So I'll connect you with Mike and we can talk offline on that. In terms of the question about EJ Map, Dataminer, What's in My Community, and the connection between permits and violations and enforcement. So they're two fundamentally different practices and exercises within the department. So the standards by which we have to ensure, the standards that we have to set within a permit when we grant someone the authority or the ability to operate in a place is permitting. And the way that we inspect and monitor whether or not you're following the standards that are set within that permit is enforcement. And so tying those two worlds together is something that Christine was mentioning we're working on, is how you can see enforcement data in EJ Map. It's just not that way right now, just because they're two different platforms, apples and oranges. But in the future, we'll make the apples and oranges into a fruit salad. We're just not there yet. Okay, so ask for your patience. At this time, I want to thank you for sticking with us throughout the morning. We're going to break now and do lunch, and then we'll regroup and do a few more trainings, and then we'll close out around 2:30. So at this time, I think our lunch is set up. Can I get a yes from? Okay, so our lunch is set up. Just feel free to make your way to the tables and grab lunch, and we'll see you back at We'll see you back at 1:20. 1:20. Thank you so much.
Okay, hi everyone. Oops. I'm going to talk to you guys about Drinking Water Watch. So this is a tool that you could use to find drinking water. Oh, sorry. Hi, my name is Rihanna Azimi. I work in the Office of Environmental Justice. I do community outreach and engagement type of work. But today I'll be talking to you about Drinking Water Watch. So this is a tool that will let you find information about drinking water in different New Jersey water systems. So first, I'm going to talk to you about how to get here. So if you're on the DEP front page, go to Programs and Units, Water Resource Management, Drinking Water, and then under Drinking Water Systems, it's right here, Drinking Water Watch. So basically what I'm going to show you today is how you can just use this tool to find out a specific water system that serves any specific town, and then how to use that information to then find the consumer water quality report. So if you're interested in knowing about if there's any issues and looking through that, you can find it like this. So let me move this. So I'm going to pick a county. If you scroll to the bottom here, I'm going to pick Essex. And this pop-up will appear. And if you scroll down to whatever section of the city you want, I'll pick Newark City and search. And then what you get is Newark Water Department. And so you have to click on this ID link over here. And so it takes you to this page, and there's a lot going on here. But what you want to look for is where they get their water from. And so here you could see it says NJDWSC Wanacue North. So that's the North Jersey District Water Supply Commission from the Wanacue Reservoir. And if you go to their website, which I have here, you can click on Public Info, Consumer Confidence Reports, and public water systems are required to publish one of these every year, and it can tell you about, I already clicked on it, the 2023 one, so I have it open here. What you want to look for, if you're looking at it at a glance, and you don't want to read through every little thing and look up everything, you can see where it's written over here, MCL meets standard. So MCL, if you scroll to the bottom, is maximum contaminant level. And so if you're looking at something like this at a glance, it says, does the maximum contaminant level meet the standard? And you could see here that it says either yes down the column or not available. If you keep scrolling down, you see it's all yeses. So this one's kind of easy to read from that perspective. Another way to use this tool is if you want to look up just a water company. So maybe you know the name of a water company, you could just type it in. So NJ American is a big one in New Jersey. And so you could search that, and this will show you all the different places that it serves, and you could sort by county, by city. And if you click here, you'll see that in more detail. Another one that we could look up is Veolia. So it's the same thing. You could see all the different areas that it serves and search to see if you want to look up a specific area. You say, okay, I can look up Hackensack or West Milford if I want to go on their website and see their water quality reports. So that's what I did. I went onto their website, and to get to this page, you have to put in a zip code, which is why you should look up where it serves first. So I picked West Milford, and if you want to look up from there, you go to My Water Service, About My Water, and then you can click on the water quality reports, which is the same as the last web page I showed you, it just slightly different name. and then put in a zip code. And I'm going to click on here to download it. So this one is pretty much saying similar things to the other one I showed you, but it's a different format. This one has a lot more context, like what does this mean, context, and like what does this mean. So a lot of this is kind of just boilerplate. If we scroll down here to the specific like results information, once again, if you're looking at this at a glance, what you want to look for is the violations. And so from what I understand, like water quality isn't like air where, you know, some days you might have like a good air day, a medium air day, a bad air day. Water quality, if you're trying to understand like what's going on in your water system, it's more like, you know, have there been any violations in the past year? And so in this one, it looks like no. So this is just a different kind of report that you can look up, and I'm not going to go too into this tool. I'm actually going to finish it there because DEP is actually working this year to revamp this tool and kind of update it, make it more user-friendly. But it's a pretty useful database if you want to use it to kind of figure out what your local water system is or what areas of water system serves, and then find out how to get your consumer water quality report from there. So I have time for a few questions. Okay.
Okay, Michelle Bufadel, NJIT. These data, they are at the plant or like in the water distribution system?
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
Like, you know, you have the, let's say, measurement of, you know, some MCL. Okay, these are at the plant. We're talking about violation. Is it only what's coming out of the water treatment plant, or do you have data that is also in the water distribution system?
I'm not sure exactly. I'm not like a water expert, but I could find out about that and get back to you with like a very clear answer, unless someone here knows how to answer it.
Just to Amy Goldsmith, State Director for Clean Water Action, just to answer a little bit of your question. Most of it is from the treatment plant, but for like the lead numbers, that is, they have to do a certain number of samples at the tap, and if 10% of them exceed the level, then they have to take action. So I guess one of the things just, it's really not so much a question, but just a point, because I work on this all the time, is that this data usually comes out in July of each year. That's the requirement under the federal law. But also the data is usually a year old. So maybe where my question comes, and it's only for the 94 contaminants that New Jersey, you know, in the federal law requires to be tested. So there's lots of other things that never get tested, and there is no standard for. But what do you do, given that water supplies have to test for different things under different timelines? And again, you might not know the answer to the question, but the size of the system determines how many times they have to test for certain things. Sometimes it's a 1-year interval, sometimes it's more often, sometimes it's 3 years, kind of, and that's partly how Newark got into trouble, is they did it every 3 years for lead. But what do you do in the interim? You know, like these consumer confidence reports are, you know, they're basically community right to know, but what do you do in the interim when things are going on, or and where do you find that information?
So you're right, I don't know the answer to that question, but it's a really good question, and my colleagues are writing them down, and so we'll get back to you about that. I'm presenting just on how to use this tool in a very basic sense, but definitely the water questions are valid, and we want to keep hearing them. So if you don't have time to ask any questions before we move on, like please share via the chat or whatever, and we'll find answers through our water team. Oh yeah, and we're gonna have a seminar, the third one, which will be in Camden. We're gonna have a whole section about water permitting, and so they'll be people there from WRM to answer your questions. But if you have questions now, you can ask them. I think we have time for maybe one or two more.
So,
And if there are any online, maybe we could take one of those.
so real quick,
Go
I
ahead.
just have two questions. One, you did mention that you're updating the system, and it's
Yes.
pretty much the question that I asked earlier. So I think the commissioner said that I could re-ask it or something.
Yeah, please.
Are you guys looking to actually update the system so that every time we go and we look up, let's say, C for community water system types, and we see violations, we're also seeing census demographics? That's my first question. And then second, in one of the previous sessions, you not you specifically, but a representative from NJDEP mentioned that you also work with EPA ECHO. When you look on EPA ECHO for drinking water violations, it only goes back, I believe, to 5 years. Is there any database where we can see, let's say, historical data on drinking water quality, just in general?
No, I'm not sure about that, but we're noting these down, and so we'll get back to you on that. Oh, no questions online? Okay. Okay, one last question, I think.
Just randomly, do you also track like biological materials, so like bacteria and viruses? Like I'm thinking about harmful algal blooms and like the bacteria that contribute to those. Is that also part of this?
I'm not sure if we do. So do you guys know? Okay.
Okay, cool, thank you.
So what my colleague said is that DEP has another app for harmful algal blooms. So if you specifically want to look that up, you can search it on our website. Okay, so I'm going to pass it off to my colleague. Kenneth, did you want to introduce Christine? So Christine, do you want to come up and present your section?
Thanks for the cheers.
So I stopped sharing, but whenever you're ready, you can.
I'm small. Because I'm tiny? Is that it? Was that a comment about my height? All right, so we're gonna presentation, slideshow. Not now. From the beginning. Okay, so you're saying online? Okay. Oh. No, I don't know what I'm doing.
So just share the screen
Okay, and then I can put this back in presentation mode. Okay, there we go. So hi, I'm Christine Schell. I run a small office off of the commissioner's office, so that very top little policy stuff that Sean was talking about this morning called Environmental Public Health and Safety. And I'm happy to talk about a few of our tools. Mostly we're going to talk about this one, which is healthy community planning, but I have a few more in the pipeline, and we'll talk about those as well. This particular website is a state-level website, so it's pretty easy to find. You can just type in Healthy Community Planning NJ, and it's usually the first thing that pops up. So it's an easy thing to find online. This effort is a combination of data from DEP and the Department of Health in New Jersey. So as the commissioner noted this morning, it's not all DEP. Other agencies have information and data. So we partner with them and came up with this planning tool. Healthy Community Planning was really kind of a predecessor to EJ Map. So it's the very high level thinking of across media, how do you plan for that? And so that's where we are. So basically the baseline on this, and that link is live, and I'm sure that they're going to share our slides. But basically what this does is it has online a municipal level health and environmental indicators report for each of the municipalities in New Jersey. So for all 564 4 municipalities in New Jersey. So they each get their own report. It gives specific information about that town for a number of different indicators. And then it also provides some benchmarks so they understand that and compares you to the state and the county that you're in. So it kind of gives you a feel for where you are with respect to others around you. And then it also provides a lot of information about what you might be able to do about that, either as a town or as a person. And then finally, this past November, we actually came out with an addendum to it, which we're really happy to talk about, that kind of walks through how towns can use it and see how they can kind of embed it into their thinking on a variety of different things like grant writing and zoning and things of that nature. So this is basically a summary report. This is Trenton, because that is where I'm from. So I always pick it. So this is a summary report for them. And we're just going to walk through this a little bit. You'll see that there are 5 broad categories all the way on my right that talk about the demographics for this area, environmental, sites, which are density-based, built environment, which is traffic, open space, housing, and then public health at the bottom. So, and within those, there's a number of what we call indicators. The indicators for public health at the bottom come from the New Jersey State Health Assessment Database, or NJSHAD. So if you are not familiar with that, you should check it out. It's on the Department of Health's webpage, and it gives you a lot of information about different illnesses and diseases and things that are going on in the state of New Jersey. So that data was pulled from them. The demographic data was pulled from census data. It's 2020 census data for these reports. And then what you'll see as you go across, each one has the indicator. There's a column that talks about what year the data is. So as I mentioned, this is about 2 years old, so that's the data that we were using when these reports came out. Then you'll see in blue is Trenton's numbers, and then you'll see in kind of that orange color is Mercer County's numbers, which is the county it's in. And then what you'll see is a county comparison right next to that in that same orange color. So for that, what that means is that the comparison in percentiles is an example as if the percentile is 92, that's okay, 92, that means that 91% of the county or the state is at a lower level for that particular indicator than the town being compared to. So that's kind of how you read those percentages. And then just a few more notes about the data. Health data, this is pretty much at the lowest we can go with health data. So if any of you are familiar with EJ Map, you'll know that there's no health data in it. And that's because health data kind of falls apart at a block group level, which is what EJ Map is at. So either the data is just not meaningful at that level, or it's so sparse that you can actually kind of pick out what's happening by parcels and tag people, and that violates HIPAA laws. But this gives you a sense of where the towns are throughout New Jersey. And some of that data still is suppressed, not in Trenton, obviously, because it's a big town, but smaller towns, again, that problem with health data can show up because it's too small and the data is suppressed. So this is a fun, every report has one of these. It's about the town, designed to put each of the municipalities in context from a community perspective. So it provides demographics that can complement the environmental issues that we just talked about and the health issues that we just talked about. And it also includes what we would determine as social determinants of health. So education levels, employment levels, percent housing, ownership, things of that nature. So it kind of sets you up to kind of take a deeper dive. And then every one of those indicators that we listed has one of these. So what you'll see is you'll have a page or two that provides background and information on the issue and pulls in town-specific maps for information, or it pulls from Dataminer specific information about that indicator that's tied to the town that you're looking at. And so all the resources listed throughout those these pages are also on the website as kind of a catch-all, as a resource. So you can kind of think about it if you don't want to dig through your report, but you want to know what are all the funding sources that might be available. You can go to that resource page and just go to funding sources, and it'll list all that for you. Let me see. So yes, so you get that for every one of those indicators, and it gives you kind of a plethora of information. Some would say way too much information, so the reports themselves are like somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 pages for the town itself, so in a PDF form. But we did create it in a sense of, in a time frame where people were like, please don't give me one more tool. The towns just kind of wanted to see where they were in the context of this rest of the state. So that was us meeting that demand from the municipalities. Just some other things that our HCP offers. It does have a facts FAQ page, and it also talks about what the data limitations are. It also tells you how we did create the data. So kind of deep dive into the really geeky coding stuff that my staff does in terms of how they got that data into a town format. So that's all on there. There is a really a comprehensive glossary that covers not only DEP terms, but also Department of Health terms throughout the reports. And then it finally provides some feedback mechanisms for you to kind of interact back with us. If you had questions on your town, or you wanted like one of us to come out and talk to you, we could do that and work through that. So I told you we did one new thing this past summer. We were fortunate enough to have an intern who came in and kind of looked at the page and also really talked with the towns and the users and tried to figure out what was missing and what they wanted from us moving forward. So one of the things that she created, there's some websites or videos on the page now that kind of walk you through what I just did for you for that summary report. Kind of just gives you that in a visual because they were having problems like just reading all the text. So we did that, and then we also created buckets that where we kind of stepwise you through depending on what you do within your municipality. So we know that local health departments, which this tool was primarily built for, know what they're doing and know how to use it. We created a page for them as well. But then we also wanted people to understand that there were a lot of different things that the local governments in New Jersey do that this data can benefit and make better. So what our intern did is went through those different examples of functions at municipalities. So community and education, emergency management, grant writing, long-term planning, parks and recreation. They're in control of all of that for their towns. And she went through and kind of stepwise you through how would you use this data and gave you some concrete examples of like, here's how it would look without the data, and here's how much more powerful it is if you have the data. So what's next for us? So I told you originally we did stagnant PDF for each of the municipalities because that's what the municipalities asked for. And this is kind of a story of be careful what you wish for. So now they have it and they're like, yeah, that's super great, but you know, how do we get the data? How do we pull that out and use that separate from the website, which you can't do at the moment in a stagnant report? And like, how do we search it? How do we, you know, dig down on an issue? So we heard them, and we are in the process of developing a high-level HCP tool. I would call it more of a dashboard that'll pull all that data in, make the data updates seamless. So like I said, the data is about 2 years old at this stage of the game because just really creating that within a Python code is just very challenging for all 565 municipalities. So this tool will then allow us to do those updates more seamlessly like we do for EJ Map. So we update EJ Map every 6 months. It'll provide the users with that underlying data. So if they want to take a deeper dive on traffic, they'll be able to download that data and then use that data for whatever they're doing, whether it's planning or zoning or other communications and outreach. And it'll create new visuals for them. So in addition to the graph, it'll allow us to do some really pretty cool graphics that'll kind of give them a better sense of what's happening and put them in perspective. And we think it'll improve access to the, oh, I already said that, so. So that's HCP NJ. We're very proud of it. We are constantly growing it, and we really do want input on it. So if you want to understand it better, you can definitely reach out and talk to us. Or you want to understand what we're doing to make it better, you should definitely reach out. So I'm going to talk about 2 other tools. Or do you want me to take HCP questions first? Okay. So anybody have any questions about HCP? They're in food comas. This always happens to me. I'm always the last speaker.
Hello.
Hello.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
And I understand the struggle about being on the short side. So there's a lot of great information. I know that's mostly from municipalities, so majority of it's going to be in English. Are there information in other languages, or is there thoughts of putting this info, since we're such a multicultural state here? Not everyone speaks English.
Yes. So there's definitely thoughts of putting it in different languages. One of the other tools I'm going to talk to you about in a minute actually already is in both English and Spanish. So that is something that we've leveraged with the new tools that we're using through Esri products. And I think that once we do this, that'll be easier to do too. It's not like EJ Map where it's more of a mapping product. It's more like an overarching, I don't know how to say it, like a business analyst type environment that'll be in. So I think that would be an easier lift. But yes, we're very conscious of language. We talk all the time to OEJ about doing translations and how we get that information out.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. In terms of so public health, you mentioned that that's like the data, you have minimal data there. And you said you have to stop like at the block level. So do you have like, for example, data for people with diabetes and
NJSHAD has a wealth of data on, so HCP does have diabetes. NJSHAD has all the health indicators, so heart disease, all different types of cancers for the state of New Jersey. And you can dig down to the, my DOH partners are not here, so I will say that I don't find NJSHAD very easy to use. Which is one of the reasons we kind of did this tool and put it all in one place at a municipal level. But you can get municipal level data out of their information too. And I do recommend checking it out. There's a lot of data there. It's NJSHAD, S-H-A-D.
and can you comment, please, on terms of air quality, the particulate matters, because with the usage of EV, electric vehicles, of course, we expect that the VOCs, volatile organic, compounds, are going to be less, but the particulate matters, from the brakes, because electric vehicles are heavier, they're going to increase. So I think that's something maybe, I don't know how you guys predicting to deal with it.
So I don't, but ironically, my husband does at the department. So they're looking into all of that as well. They're looking into how replacing with electric vehicles what it will do and what problems it might create. We just got new legislation in the state of New Jersey about recycling the batteries. So they are definitely thinking through those pieces, but it's not my world, it's Brad's.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Agnes. I'm with the New Jersey Department of Health. And
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
love this.
NJSHAD is awesome. I apologize.
No, I was just going to echo what you said. I'm with the Epidemiology Surveillance and Evaluation team for the Chronic Disease Unit. So we work with a lot of these programs, and the majority of the information that we upload or try to update is within NJSHAD. That's our main tool when it relates to chronic diseases for New Jersey. So it is like the baseline resource to use. We do know that there are some things that we need to include and keep working on and improving with the tool. So we're definitely working on it. I know that for example, it's very difficult to find native data. We were just talking about that at the table here with NJSHAD. So there's constant improvements that are being made, but NJSHAD is a decent tool to use, I would say, if you're trying to get just basic chronic disease data for New Jersey.
Yeah, the one thing that we did do with that NJSHAD data, pulling it in an HCP, is we age adjusted it. So that gives it a different, it kind of flattens it out. So you're not seeing a very high peak, but you're in a community that has a very high rate of elderly people. It kind of flattens that out and makes it even. So we did do that in HCP. Okay, let's talk about other tools. So just two other tools. My team created this probably about 2.5 years ago, potential lead exposure mapping. For those of you who are not aware, lead is a legacy environmental source in our environment, as it's widely used in industrial processes and commercial products such as paint, gasoline, and pesticides, and it does not naturally degrade. Lead exposure can occur through inhalation, ingestion, and rarely through skin contact, and it increases a person's risk of a range of health issues, including brain and nervous system damage, and it can impact your kidneys and blood. Children in particular are very susceptible to lead. Their tissue absorbs 4 to 5 times that of an adult, and their brain and nervous systems are still developing. And also, quite frankly, they're crawling on the ground. So if you're in a place, they put stuff in their mouths, so they're definitely a target audience. Recognizing all this, our governor released the lead paint lead-based paint inspection law. So we kind of paralleled with him doing that to give them a sense of where they should be looking for lead-based paint issues. It's really in the space of the age of the house. So if you see on the left side, that's like a parcel level look at the map. You'll see there's 3 colors. The brown is before 1950, and we can pretty much guarantee, unless there's been some remediation in the house, that that house has lead. Then there's the between 1950 and 1978, there may be lead in there. The industries were taking some steps to reduce lead in paint at that time, but the federal government had not come up with a law yet. And then post 1978, you're pretty clear. So this map was just designed really to parallel with that law, which requires the municipalities to inspect homes and work with the tenants to remediate if they have to. So again, we did this in partnership not only with our Department of Health, but also our DCA, Department of Community Affairs. So this was like a big effort that we did with them. It's pretty cool because it's at a parcel level, so you're going all the way down to the house itself. It only shows residential houses. And I did find out that my house I grew up in had lead paint all over it, so that was exciting. We are hoping to update this and expand it, so the name is a little misleading because the only thing in it right now is the housing data. But we do want to expand it to lead service lines, perhaps, contaminated soils that can be contaminated from airports or former airports, and or orchards from the pesticides. So stay tuned from that, but it's a pretty cool tool to just kind of see where your housing comes into play. And then last but not least, I am going to talk about Heat Hub. So Natalie, who was here earlier, Deputy Chief Resilience Officer, we've been working really hard with her on extreme heat. As most of you know, it's getting hotter. The planet is warming, and we really wanted to create a space where we could educate the public about heat. In case you didn't know, New Jersey is warming at faster rates than the global average and faster than any of the Northeast states. 15 of our last 20 hottest years on record occurred since 2000. And despite not being as visually dramatic as other national disasters like our hurricanes, extreme heat events are the far deadliest of the weather events. In 2022 alone, an average of 700 deaths and more than 67,000 emergency room visits happened in the US, and that were attributed to extreme heat from heat waves. So we wanted to work in this space because it's public health related, and it's a way for us to leverage the data in a way that leans into the concerns that people often do not self-identify as vulnerable to heat, and then they underestimate heat impacts on their bodies and those of their loved ones. And so we wanted to create a space where you could go and learn about that. So Heat Hub is pretty cool. I do recommend, again, you can just type in Heat Hub New Jersey, you get right there. It's kind of interactive, it's mixed media. So we have videos on there, we have some pretty cool ways to determine if you're vulnerable to heat, kind of self-assess yourself. We have quizzes and surveys. And so speaking of surveys, so this one is on the website right now. We have been really looking into cooling centers and what that looks like in the state of New Jersey. And it would really help us if people would take our survey and let us know if they even know what a cooling center is, if they've ever been to one, if not why. It gives us some knowledge and information about what's going on so that we can take that to back with us to our other state agencies and talk about those. And I left it on that table over there. Natalie also wanted to hot off the presses is another new survey on extreme heat that just went up. I have flyers for it, both in English and in Spanish. So please take a flyer and do the survey, and then I'll get a lot of credit from Natalie that I did that, and she got people to take the survey. Oh. You're really asking me for... I'm just going to let Candace do that. Yeah. There we go.
There we go.
There you go. One final thing on Heat Hub, we are looking to do a pretty big relaunch of it. We launched it last Climate Week of last year. We're looking to do a pretty big splash this coming Earth Day. And we're working on some new graphics, mapping. We're working with our Department of Health and Human Services. They are now two separate departments, on some videos that dive down into the health and mental health issues that surround heat. So we're excited about that, and we're going to do that in conjunction with the climate resiliency team, who is hoping to come out with their draft extreme heat resilience action plan, or extreme heat wrap, at that same time. So stay tuned for that. I just won't go to the next. Okay, there it is. Still sharing? Okay. So this is me. That is the department's website and my office's website. All of our tools are on our website. So you can find all of those, including a link to EJ Map on there. That's my phone. Feel free to call me, and we can chat. And if you have any questions about those other tools, now's the time to ask them.
Hi, I was wondering, oh, that's loud. Do they have like a statewide inventory of all of the cooling centers? And if so, is there an effort to make that publicly available?
I so wish that was a real thing. We have been working with so many state agencies. I had no idea how many state agencies were involved to get-go. We're working with state police, Office of Emergency Management. We're working with all of the county level coordinators to get that. We really want that, and we really want to tie that into Heat Hub. We are also working with 211, which is a private contractor to, I think, DCA at this stage, and we're trying to do that. We've been trying to do that for about a year and a half, so we're getting closer. And I'm excited that we're getting closer. We're moving the ball. But one of the things that I'm hoping to release with this particular relaunch is something I'm workshopping the name, like It's Cool in New Jersey, or Where to Cool in New Jersey, which is more, less about emergency and more about like, where are all the lakes that you can swim in? Or where are the swimming pools? Where are the whatever, those pads that spit up water? Where are the parks, and which are the ones that have the most straight? So that I'm really hoping is going to be ready, because my staff does that, and I already told them to do it. But the other thing is, it requires a lot of sausage making.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. With cooling spaces and heat hub, I'm just interested because this is the first time I'm hearing about it, so it just seems really interesting. Yeah, I'm
We
sorry.
did not do a good marketing job.
No, I'm sorry. It's probably just where my mind has been at. But are some of the initiatives or ideas that you guys have, is it surrounding like the cooling spaces, like green rooftops, accessibility? Because you mentioned like parks and lakes, accessibility to a lot of communities. Does it incorporate a lot of that? Data-wise?
It talks about places where you can get cool and from a natural perspective. It doesn't dive into what I think you're talking about, which is like mitigation strategies.
Yeah, yeah.
Which kind of comes out of a different part of the department. We'll grow to that, but we want it to first kind of get people all on the same page about what it is and what's happening.
Got you, okay.
But we will definitely grow the space.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I guess that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. All right, folks, so that kind of wraps us up. I want to first thank, if you can all join me in giving a round of applause to all of our DEP staff that presented today. Again, thank you so much for your service. Thank you for your time, and thank you for showing up to be here. I also want to thank my OEJ staff. Thanks for the planning and all the logistics. And lastly, thanks to all of you all for showing up, for devoting your time to engage and meet with us, and just taking the next steps to learn a bit more about all of our DEP world. We named this Navigating the DEP System for a reason, because it is a large place to navigate. And even ourselves as DEP staffers, we are also learning how to navigate it and how to create this world that best works for the people that we serve. So please continue to connect with us, build relationships with us, and give us your feedback. We would really love to hear it. And hopefully we'll see you on the next stops on our seminar series. So we have another one in Camden, in Trenton, and hopefully a fourth one to be announced soon. So I hope to see you then, and let this not be the last time that we speak and connect. So I wish you a good rest of your weekend, and we'll talk soon. Thank you.